Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. My name is Julian, and this is an episode where I update you guys about what's going on in the preseason and who you should be looking at based on some early preseason lines. Before we get started, guys, please leave a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. More than half of you guys are not subscribed, and be sure to check out my Patreon. Link is in the description below if you do want to take your subscription to the next level. There's some pretty cool perks. Definitely check that out. Now guys, I know this is not my normal studio today, but things happen, so I had to move things a little bit today. No big deal. Definitely going to continue videos as usual, guys. And today's preseason content video is going to be a pretty good one. So definitely stay tuned for the full video because you're going to want to know everything that's going on in the preseason. Now, by no means is this an exhaustive list of everything that's going on. I chose to talk about a select few teams. If you guys want more information than this, be sure to follow me on Twitter, or X as they call it now, at Fantasy Tipped. And I'll be sure to be tweeting a whole bunch of things that I'm seeing in this preseason and how that could help you going forward. All right, let's jump into it, guys, and let's start with the first update that I have. And the first thing I have noticed is that in the Carolina Hurricanes, Martin Necas, who's going at an ADP of 103.4, is not playing on the top power play. He's still in the top 6, but he's not playing on that top power play unit because they have both Burns and DeAngelo playing up there. So that's something to note, and that lowers his value a little bit. So I'm not super high on drafting Necas at this point. There are some other guys going around his range that are probably a little bit safer, because if they do end up sticking with that line, Necas not being top power play definitely hurts him a lot because he pretty much was there the whole year last year. Now, as for Brent Burns, I had knocked him down to number 21 on my defenseman ranking because I was nervous that Tony DeAngelo was going to usurp him on that top power play. Now that DeAngelo and Burns are looking like they're both going to be on that top power play, that's good news for Brent Burns. His value probably goes back up to a number 11 through 13-ish defenseman, which is really good for him. And I think that he's being drafted at a pretty decent ADP to where he's going. Might be a tad high still, but definitely better value than I thought he was going to be when he was not top power play. So don't have a problem with Burns. And then Dmitry Orlov gets a little bit of a boost as well because he seems to be manning that second power play unit. As for the Detroit Red Wings, they initially opened their training camp with DeBrincat, Larkin, and Lucas Raymond on their top line, but they have since moved David Perrone to the top line. Supposedly the coach likes both combinations, and they're going to see what they end up going with on opening night. But if David Perrone does end up in that top spot, that is mouth-watering. His upside is probably lower than Raymond, but he's definitely a lot safer, so I definitely trust him a lot more on that top line than I do Lucas Raymond. And Perrone likely gets top power play as well with those guys. So this guy could have a huge bounce back year after that down year that he had last year. Mouth-watering, especially at a super late ADP of 146.9. The next guy I have an update about is Ville Husso, and Coach Lalonde said the Red Wings plan to use Husso a similar amount of games as he played last year, which was about 56 games. That's great news to hear because they just signed Reimer and Lyon. That really silences any kind of worries that they had about him maybe splitting starts this year or anything like that. He's definitely going to be the number one goalie this year unless he really struggles. So Husso is definitely a pretty safe pick later in your draft around 140. Tyler Bertuzzi is someone who's interesting. If you did not check out my Leafs video, definitely do so. I have a whole bunch of Leafs updates because I did already have their preseason lines when I released that video, so definitely do that. But the Bertuzzi is playing with Marner and Matthews. That definitely is pretty mouth-watering, right? He's going to have a bounce-back year this year for sure. He's not playing top power play, right? The core four there are on the top power play, plus a defenseman, which should be Klingberg this year, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Bertuzzi still is in a very good opportunity to succeed, and I see him having a really good bounce back this year at an ADP of 150. That could be a pretty good value right there. Jumping into Klingberg now, the top power play, like I expected this offseason, has gone to John Klingberg. At least it looks that way right now, with Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander as I expected. So he's in a pretty good spot here to have a bounce back year. I would expect him to have a bounce back year, in fact. Now, he didn't have a great year last year on the Anaheim Ducks, and who the hell expected him to have a good year with Anaheim, right? They're not exactly an offensive juggernaut. However, the Leafs are pretty good offensively, and that power play should be pretty deadly. So I'm expecting Klingberg to really have a decent year. And at this ADP, you can't really go wrong with a top power play defenseman in John Klingberg. What does that mean for Morgan Rielly? It means he has basically no value. The second power play is Järnkrok, Domi, Bertuzzi, Liljegren, and Rielly. And as it is, Rielly was not really that great fantasy-wise. Even when he was top power play, right? Because his peripherals aren't really that great. So I really don't recommend drafting Morgan Rielly this year. Lucas Reichel is the next guy I want to talk about. We're talking about the Chicago Blackhawks line. And people were excited because people thought he might debut on the top line with Taylor Hall and Connor Bedard. But it looks like the Blackhawks are giving him another shot to play at center. And at least to start, he's going to start as their second line center with Athanasiou and Kurashev. Now, he did develop some chemistry with Athanasiou last year, so, that could be interesting. As of right now, unless I'm in a super deep league, I don't think it's necessary to draft Lucas Reichel. He's going to get a great opportunity, obviously, and I think that he may be an early waiver wire pickup within the first couple weeks of the season if he does play well. Now, if you're in a super deep league, definitely throw a late round pick at him. He definitely could shine. Maybe he'll even get top power play time with Bedard. That remains to be seen. But for now, it looks like he's going to be on the second line with two, semi-decent players. So let's see how that goes. But unfortunately, he's not playing with Bedard. The next guy on this list is Ryan Donato. And if you're in a super deep league, it might be worth just throwing a dart at Ryan Donato. Now, I don't think it's gonna be a hit or anything like that, but just in the off chance that it does, he's playing right now. He's practicing on the line with Taylor Hall and Connor Bedard, which is a great place for him to be. Nobody expected Donato to be on that top line to start. But Donato has shown flashes of, that he could be a pretty good player in the past. So maybe he'll finally be able to unlock his full potential this year. That remains to be seen. But if he looks good early in the season, he's definitely a waiver wire pickup. I don't recommend drafting him really unless you're in a very, very deep league. But definitely someone to look out for. My next preseason update is the LA Kings. Loved watching them in Melbourne against the Arizona Coyotes. Lost the first game, won the second one. And their lines are pretty interesting. Their first line is Byfield, Kopitar, and Kempe, which is a very nice line. That's pretty much what they were going with at the end of the season last year. And that line looked pretty good. Then Fiala, Dubois, and Kaliev is their second line. Kaliev finally getting, a top 6 opportunity, which is mouth-watering. So that's exciting and could be draftable in some deeper leagues. And on the third line, Trevor Moore, Philip Danault, and Arvidsson. 3 lines of really, really good players. All 9 of them are draftable in fantasy leagues. In the deeper ones, Moore and Kaliev are definitely draftable. In more shallower leagues, everyone but those 2 guys is basically draftable. So that's pretty good for the LA Kings. Definitely a team you're going to want to keep your eye on in fantasy this year. For the Coyotes, they had Keller, Hayton, and Schmaltz. They put that line back together just like I expected this year. Hayton is someone that is going way too late in drafts, and people should have their eyes on him because he could have a really good year. He's playing top power play as well, so keep that in mind. On the second line, Zucker, Cooley, and Genther. I thought Michelli would be in that spot, but it remains to be seen. Maybe he'll still be elevated there if he looks good enough in training camp. Michelli did have the second most points as a rookie last year, so he's definitely someone that is a great player. But right now he's playing on the line with Bukestad and Krause. We'll see if he ends up moving up the lineup. I think that would only make sense. But if he does, could have a little bit of value in deeper leagues. Obviously, Logan Cooley starting with Zucker is a good spot too, and he looked pretty good in those preseason games. The next one that I liked that was really interesting to me is Nils Hoglander. Last year, he started the season on the 4th line, and this year he started in the preseason on the top line with Pettersson and Kuzmenko. As of right now, I'm not getting too excited about Hoglander. But if that line ends up sticking, he could end up having some value unless you're in an insanely deep league. I'm still not recommending drafting him, but if he looks good in the first couple of actual games, Hoglander could be a very early waiver wire grab. Now, it's also worth noting that he's not power play 1. It's Brock Besser who's the 5th guy on that power play, but still, playing top line with Pettersson is worth a note. And finally, we have the Dallas Stars lines. And I know if I didn't cover your team, I'm sorry. I'm going to probably issue some tweets if there's anything that I think is noteworthy. But the Dallas Stars lines are pretty good this year. Their top 9 is good, and almost all of them are fantasy draftable. That top line of Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski obviously hasn't changed. But Ben, Wyatt Johnston, and Evgeny Dadonov, pretty good second line. And the third line of Marchment, Sege, and Duchesne is a hell of a good line. I think Duchesne might have himself a really nice bounce back. And like I said, pretty much all these guys are draftable in deeper leagues. Dadonov is a really deep league kind of guy, but definitely still could have some value. And then Wyatt Johnston just came off, a pretty good season where he scored 40, 41 points, whichever one it was. And he's only looking to build on that. Still playing with Jamie Benn, who I does think regresses a little bit, but I think Wyatt Johnston gets even better this year. So in deeper leagues, he could be someone you throw a dart at as well, although I'm not as high on him as some other fantasy YouTubers. And that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed the content today, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks for watching all the way through, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.